All right, Rabbi, say good morning. An incredible daf ahead of us today. We have actually a lot to do today. Want to begin by thanking our Talmud Torah sponsors. As I mentioned yesterday, Baruch Hashem, we have 4 Talmud Torah sponsors this month, which is pretty incredible. To thank Czinn Teri Kahn for dedicating all the Shimmy Batsheva this month in honor of the birth of their first grandchild, Adin Tzvi Hochbaum. To thank Benjamin Wall for dedicating all of the Shimmy Batsheva this month. And of Hakaras Hatov to Moishe Abramson and to Jeremy Lasson, who enable so many to be able to learn Torah together with us. To thank Shimmy Batsheva Messing for dedicating all the Shimmy Batsheva this month in honor of the Bas Mitzva of their daughter Lilah. And to thank Paul and Kathy Pollack for dedicating all the Shimmy Batsheva this month in memory of Paul's parents. Paul's father, Shmuel ben Zechariah, is his mother, Leah bas Avrohom, great-grandmother, Tziril bas Rav Dov. And to thank our Daf Yomi sponsors, Moishe and Abramson, for dedicating all of Perek Arvei Pesachim in the Zechus of a Refuah Shlema for Daniel Meir ben Chana. Well, so with that, let us begin. So today's Daf is Kuf Yud Daled, 114. We have a lot to do today, still on Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Beis. We left off on Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Beis. And we left off with Tan Rabbanan. So we'll say we are in the wide lines, 2, 4, 6 lines into the wide lines. So we'll say some incredibly beautiful Gemara today. Chevron, Zoom, you hear me all right? Excellent. Okay, good. So we'll say, so with that we go on. Tan Rabbanan, Shlosha Chayin Enen Chayim. There are 3 people whose lives are not lives. Right? Their lives are not lives. Who are they? The Gemara says, Harachmanin, V'haraschanin, V'anini Hadas. So we'll say this is really incredible. 3 people whose lives are not lives, which means 3 people who have difficulty each and every day of life. And who are they? People who are overly compassionate, people who are easy to anger, and people who are very delicate. So if you look at the Rashbam says, Harachmanin, Yosemidai, V'hani Shlosha Milei Davar HaTadir Bohen Kol Shah, so we'll say, the Rashbam says what it really means is there are 3 people who don't find any menucha in life. They just don't find any menucha. So we'll say, what does this mean? Somebody's overly compassionate. Isn't being compassionate a good thing? If somebody is very sensitive, there's so much difficulty, and there's so much sadness, and there's so much suffering in the world. So if you're an overly compassionate individual, it's difficult to find menucha. Raschanin, there's no shortage of things to get the person angry in this world. No menucha. Anini hadas, a very delicate individual, same thing. There's no shortage of things which can make a person a little bit squeamish. So if you possess these 3 types of midos, then ultimately, again, a person finds no menucha. V'amrav Yosef, Kulu isnubi. Rabbi Yosef says, by the way, I possess all of these midos. Okay? Tanabanan, Shlosha sonin zeh. There are 3 things, or three groups, which hate each other. Elohein, haklovim, dogs, tarnagolin, v'hachaborin. So again, I will say these are all, again, at least for the klovim and tarnagolin, so these are, the animals fight over the scraps. Chaborin, this was a group of people, a group of Persians. Veish omim af hazonos. Some say also zonos, again, fighting over business. And some say even the Talmidei Chachamim of Bavel. So we'll say this, the Gemara elsewhere also discusses the distinction between the Talmidei Chacham of Bavel and the Talmidei Chacham of Eretz Yisrael. Then in Eretz Yisrael, they were nochin zelazeh. They were much kinder to each other, versus in Bavel, they were a bit more caustic to one another. There are 3 groups where everybody loves each other. Eluhein, Hagerim, Avodim, Va'arvin. So I'll say Gerim. So interestingly enough, these were often groups who sometimes were shunned by others. So as often happens, when you have groups of people who are shunned by others, they often band together. So Gerim, unfortunately, could be shunned by others. Avodim and Arvin, the Braven. Arba inadas sov Lasson. There are 4 people who, again, when you see them, at the end of the day, people can't tolerate them. Who are these individuals? Dal goa, a poor person who is arrogant. Right? They will say it doesn't make any sense that a poor person, what does he have to be arrogant about? Ani mechachish, a rich person who refuses to pay his debts. Who, when, again, literally means he contradicts. That when he's told he owes money, he contradicts. Zaki menaif, an immoral old man. See, I will say, by the time a person is old, those fires of desire are quieted. So a young person who's immoral, I understand. But an old person who's immoral, it doesn't even make sense. Uparnis miska ala tzibar bechinam, and a leader who goes ahead and asserts himself over the tzibur for no reason. Miska literally means he acts in a haughty way over the tzibur for no reason. Yesh omrim afa megarish ishto par mishonu ushniya machzira. Others say this also applies to a man who divorces his wife a first time and the second time and remarries her each time. I have a Tanakama, so why doesn't the Tanakama include this last one of a man who divorces his wife a first time remarries her, second time he remarries her? To which the Gemara says sometimes there's a good reason for that. Sometimes the Tanakama zimna the ksuvasa meruba. Sometimes he has to remarry her. Why? Because he can't afford her ksuva. Or sometimes he has to remarry her just simply because he can't afford the divorce settlement. The other possibility is other times they have children, and he realizes that for the benefit of the children, he needs to remarry her. 5 things Canaan, the son of Noah, commanded his sons. So the Gemara says, Avu zeh, love each other. Avu es hagezel, love theft. Avu es hazima, love immorality. Sanu es adonechan, hate your masters. V'al tedabru emes, and never speak the truth. Good fatherly advice from Canaan. Shishat dvarim ne'emarim b'sus. There are 6 qualities that are said about a horse. Oives haznus, the horse apparently is very immoral. Oives hamilchama, the horse loves battle. Rucho gasa, the horse is an arrogant animal. Mois es hashina, the horse does not really sleep that much. Va'ochel harbe v'motzi kimo, it eats a lot and excretes a little. V'eish omrim af mevakish larog baila b'mochama. Others say also a horse will try to kill its owner over the course of battle. So we'll say the Rashbam points out these are important details to know for mekach umemkar purposes, right? When purchasing horse. Shiva menudin l'shamayim. There are 7 individuals who are excommunicated klape shmaya to the Ribono Shel Olam. There are 7 people who have fallen out of favor with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Eluheim, these are them. Misha ein lo isha, someone who's not married. I will say this refers to someone who does not try to get married. Someone who does not make an effort to get married. Or someone who's married doesn't have children. Same thing. A person who doesn't make an effort to have children. We'll say, obviously we know that sometimes a person could try hard and not find the shidduch. Same way, Rahman al a person could be married and not have children. Those individuals are not chas v'shalom excommunicating HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when somebody doesn't make an effort, someone doesn't make an effort to find the shidduch, someone doesn't make an effort to have a family, or one who has children but does not raise them to learn and to appreciate Torah. And someone who does not wear tefillin on his head or tefillin on his arm or tzitzis on his clothing or mezuzahs in his home. So we'll say, remember again, it's actually a very profound formulation, right? Because if you think about that string of things, it's talking about a person who does not surround himself with kedusha. Think about what is the point of mitzvos. The point of mitzvos is to envelop us in holiness. I have tefillin on my arm. I have tefillin on my head. I have tzitzis on my clothing. I have a mezuzah on my door. So that wherever I go and wherever I am in life, I am enveloped by kedusha. That's the point of mitzvos. The Rebbeinu Shalom is not trying to control. The Rebbeinu Shalom is not trying to give us stuff to do, give us a spiritual busy work, but the entire idea is to envelop one in holiness. So a person who does not avail himself of the opportunity to envelop himself in holiness, the Gemara says, is minudin min hashamayim. He's excommunicated. Not because HaKadosh Baruch Hu excommunicates him, but because he excommunicates himself. You don't take advantage of the opportunities on your arm, on your head, on your beged, on your home, to envelop yourself in Kedusha. You're pushing yourself away from the Ribono Shel Olam. It's incredible. The Gemara says, and one who goes ahead and doesn't wear shoes. We spoke about this in yesterday's daf as well, how Chazal felt that walking around barefoot was like such a degradation. So a person who allows himself to be degraded in this way is also cast off from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'yesh omrim, af mi she'ein meisev bechabura shel mitzvah. Both said this is actually quite beautiful. Who else is excommunicated from God? Someone who doesn't recline in the company of a mitzvah. Now, if you look at the Rashbam says bechabura mitzvah ki go mishte shel bris milah o bas koin lekoin. So this is interesting This is someone who doesn't partake of an opportunity at a Sudas Mitzvah. Such an interesting thing. I will say, so if there's a Sudas Mitzvah and you don't partake of it, such a person is cut off from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Which will say such a beautiful yisod, because what it also says, why? I don't understand. This doesn't seem to work, with all of the other things. Well, if you think about this, what's wrong with not partaking in a Sudas Mitzvah? Because what it says so beautifully, this idea is when you partake of a Sudas Mitzvah, you're also fostering relationships with others. Right? Yes, I'm participating in a mitzvah, and I'm fostering a relationship with others. If you don't take the opportunity to foster your relationships with community, with others, such a person is cast off from the Ribbon Shalom. I will say, again, like I always say with these Gemaras, so much more than what we're covering inside, but you'll Meretz Hashem go back and look at it on your own as well. How do you know that you can't consult the Chaldean? Shmuel said the Chaldean were individuals who used to, I guess in English we use the word necromancers, right? They are people who consulted with the dead, sorcery, kishuv, tell the future. Because the pasuk says, be complete with Hashem your God. And Rashi over there already comments and he says, don't try to understand the future. Don't try to tell the future. Okay. How do you know that if you know that your friend is superior to you even in one area, that you're obligated to give him kavod? In other words, if your friend is superior to you in one area in life, whatever the area is, you're obligated to give him kavod. Shneimar. Suppose there's an interesting halacha. Remember again, midah oraisa. After a woman gives birth to a girl, she's tameah for 7 days. To a boy, for 14 days. For a boy, 7 days, and then afterwards there's a period of dam tohar, which means biblically speaking, she could, even if she bleeds, technically speaking, that dam is tahora. That time is totally ritually pure. So the Gemara says, so again, we obviously don't really hold by this biblical model today. We have a different rabbinic model which has replaced this. But the Gemara says over here that halacha lamaisa, how do we know that after a woman finishes her period of dam tohar, that halacha lamaisa, she has to wait a certain amount of time before being with her husband, out of concern that if she bleeds after the period of dam tohar, she may confuse that dam and think that it is dam tohar still, when in fact it's really dam tomei. So how long does she have to wait? Amarav ona, one period, which again the Rashbam points out is a day and a night. Tana, hu Yosef ish Hutzal, hu Yosef Abavli, hu Isi ben Gur, Aryeh, hu Isi ben Yehuda, hu Isi ben Gamliel, hu Isi ben Mahalalel. So I will say, so again, the Gemara is just saying over here that the individual who is identified as Yosef ish Hutzal is also the same person known as Yosef Abavli, same person known as Isi bar Guryeh, also the same person known as Isi ben Yehuda, also the same person known as Isi ben Gamliel, also the same person known as Isi ben Mahalo. He's all the same person. Umashmo, what was his actual name? Isi ben Akavya Shmo. His name was Isi ben Akavya. Good. Rabbi Yitzchak ben Tavlo, so the Gemara says similarly, Hu Rabbi Yitzchak ben Tavlo, Hu Rabbi Yitzchak ben Chaklo, Hu Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elah, Hu, top of Kuf Yudalid, Hu Rabbi Yitzchak ben Acha, the Shmaitu. So both say these are all the same person, but by the way, when the Gemara quotes a halacha, what we call a shmaisa, so the Gemara says that he's known by the name of Rabbi Yitzchak ben Acha and Rabbi Yitzchak ben Pinchas de Agarata. And he knows Rabbi Yitzchak ben Pinchas when he's quoted in the context of an Agarata. V'simarach, and the way to remember again, Yitzchak ben Acha for halacha, Yitzchak ben Pinchas for Agarata, V'simarach Shimu na Achai v'rei. So we'll say it's a great play on words. So Shimu na, when it's a shmaisa, which is a halachic ruling, Achai, Rabbi Yitzchak ben Acha. Beautiful. Amrabba Barbachan Rabbi Yochanan Mishro, say third line, Kuf Yudal Amud Aleph. Sorry for the pace. Amrabba Barbachan Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eloi. Echol Batzal v'Sheiv Batzel. We'll say this is great. Eat an onion, Batzal, and sit in the shade. Now we'll say, now what does that mean? Now when you see this Gemara, at first glance, maybe just what it means is Chazal are giving us like some medical advice again, that when you eat onions, you should have a little bit of shade after you're supposed to. Look what the Rashbam says. This is incredible. The Rashbam says, Echol batzal v'shev batzel, Echol batzal o yirakos. If you accustom yourself to eating onions or other vegetables, v'teshev b'tzel beisecha, you will be able to sit in the shade of your home. V'al limkar beisecha. You won't have to sell your home. Others will say this is incredible. Rabbi Rachana is saying, live within your means. Live within your means. And if so, again, achal batzal means eat simple food, and you'll be able to sit in the shade of your home. You won't have to sell your home. We'll say, what an incredible yisod. Live within your means. We'll say, it's incredible to understand that the notion of social pressure and keeping up with the Joneses is not a new phenomenon. It's human nature. It's human nature, and it's human nature to see something that someone else has, and of course wanted. If it wasn't human nature, there wouldn't be one of the dibros that says, lo sachmod. It's human nature to want to keep up with what you see everyone else doing. The problem just is, if you try to keep up and you can't keep up, you should never try to keep up. That's number one. Right? Life's not about keeping up. But the problem is, if a person lives beyond their means, they compromise every other aspect of their existence. So the Gemara says, if you live within your means, achal batzal just means eat onions. You don't have to eat onions if you don't want to, but if all you could afford is onions, eat onions. And if you do so, a shave batzel, you'll be able to keep the rest of your life in proper equilibrium. So profound. So the Gemara goes right there. So along the same lines, don't eat geese and chickens, and let your heart not run after them. So again, the Rashbam says, "V'libcha rodef alecha u'mis'avelecha kol shorogalta." If you get accustomed to the finer things in life, the problem is, we'll say it's easy to. We all know this. What begins as a luxury very quickly becomes a necessity. That's fine if your lifestyle could support that, but if your lifestyle can't support that, you could put yourself in some significantly difficult situations. Pachos mimechlach u'mishtech v'tosif al dirascha. This is very interesting. Spend less money on your food and drink, and spend more money on your home. So I'll say, this could be investment advice, right? That maybe, again, spend less money on food and drink and invest in your real estate, right? Because your home is one of your major assets. So, or on a metaphoric level, what it also means is as follows. Food and drink goes. The home represents something that remains. So it could be that in life, go ahead and invest your time and energy, not into fleeting things, but into things that ultimately endure. On even a deeper metaphorical level, the home being referred to over here may not be the home of Olam Hazeh at all, but may refer ultimately again to the home of Olam Haba. The home of Olam Haba. So we'll say, how much am I investing? We think about retirement, so we think about, Century Village. I'm going to buy a place in Boca, right? So we'll say, so the ultimate retirement is where I'm moving to after 120. So what does my place look like over there? Right? What kind of place am I arranging for myself after 120? So the Gemara says, Pachos mimech lechu mishtech. Try to diminish the amount of time you focus on the pursuits of Olam Hazeh, v'tosif al dirascha, and make sure that you're investing in your eternal domicile, in what your Olam Haba is going to look like. How much effort are you putting into your retirement, so to speak? But the real retirement after 120, both say such a profound yisod. Ki asa Ula Amar. When Ula came along, he said, Misla mislin b'ma'arava, da'achil alisa. I'm sorry. So let me go back and read that again. So Rava says, Ki asa Ula, when Ula came along, he said, Amar misla mislin. If you look at the Rashbam, so the Rashbam says over here, he says, let me read the rest of the verse. Misla mislin b'ma'arava da'achil alisa tashi ba'aliyasa. See, he says something very interesting. He said as follows: the achal alisa. If a person goes in and eats alisa, the Rashbam says alisa is alya kilomar basar shamin tamid. If a person always goes in and eats fatty meat, which was a delicacy, person always eats fatty meat, he's going to have to go ahead and hide in the attic. Again, it's a play on words, right? Alisa, aliyasa. If you eat fatty meat, you're going to have to hide in the attic. Why are you going to have to hide in the attic? Because says the Rashbam, he says, Kisheba in letovo akfosav hu nistar she'in biyodom alifroa. Because what's going to happen? See, if you live beyond your means, then when the creditors come to go out and collect their debts, you're going to have to hide in the attic. So he who lives beyond his means and eats delicacies all of the time, when the creditors come, he's going to have to go into the attic. However, the achel kakuli akikli demasa shachiv. But a person who eats kakuli, which the Rashbam points out over here, are yirakos, are vegetables. Vegetables was always just representative of simple foods. So a person who lives within his means, literally, again, it means he could sleep in the garbage dump. I wasn't going to sleep in the garbage dump. The garbage dump was a public space. So a person who lives beyond his means may have to hide in the attic from his creditors. But a person who lives within his means has the ability to dwell in the public sphere, and he need not be concerned with avoiding anyone. But say such an incredible yesod. So you see the Gemara Chazal reinforcing this idea over and over. Live within your means, but live within your means for a couple of reasons. Number one, on a financial level, if I live within my means, so first of all, I don't have to run from anyone. If I live within my means, then I have the ability to make sure that I spend my money on the things that are important in life. But on a deeper level, living within your means is also Chazal's way of saying, have priorities in life. Have priorities. Make sure that you don't spend the majority of your time investing in your home in Olam Hazeh and neglecting your home in Olam Haba. What do you spend your time on? What do you spend your resources on? Is it all just for the pursuits of this world, or am I putting something away for the eternal retirement as well? Incredible Gemara. So we'll say now, with the Mishnah, we begin the incredible sugyas of the Seder. So here we go. Mos gulo kos rishon. We'll say, don't worry, still plenty of agata time, Yeretz Hashem, to come. And again, I would urge you, these agaratas are such important Gemaras. And I will say, you see, sometimes we often wonder why all of the time, especially in yeshiva education, is spent on Gemara. And when you learn sugyas like this, you begin to understand, because the power of Gemara is everything is in here. Really, everything is in here. Chumash is in here. Navi is in here. Musar is in here. Hashkafa is in here. Halacha is in here. Gemara, if learned correctly, is really one-stop shopping. Everything is here. These agaritas are not like nice little stories. These agaritas are life lessons. And the great challenge we have is we don't do them justice. But again, I'm only here to whet your appetite. It's your job then to go and satisfy, right? It's your job then to go ahead and eat the full meal on your own side. I beg you, don't wait 7.5 years before you come back and you see these Gemaras again. Yom Tov is coming, plenty of more time to learn in Meretz Hashem. Fold down the pages on your Gemara and look back at this. So the Gemara's Mishnah says as follows: Mazgulo kos rishon. So they poured them the first cup. So we'll see now we're getting into the arba kosos. Pour the first cup. So we already touched on this a little bit when we spoke about the sugyas of Yaknahaz. But I've poured the first cup. Beishamai says the order of brachas is first to make the bracha al hayom, which means kiddush, and then hagafen. So, for example, according to Beis Shammai, you would say the bracha of Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim first, and then you would say Hagafen afterwards. Beis Hillel omrim no, mevarech al hayayin v'acharech mevarech al yom. Beis Hillel says no, first you make the bracha of Hagafen, and then you make the bracha on Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim on Kiddush. So what's the machlokes? Ten Rabbanon, here we go. Ten Rabbanon, Devarim Shmein Beis Shammai uBeis Hillel besuda. There are a number of things that Beis Shammai still disagree about when it comes to the proper order of a Suda. But amongst them, Beis Shammai omrim, mevarech al yom v'achar mevarech al hayayin. So Beis Shammai says, first you make a bracha on Kiddush. Mevarech al yom means the bracha of Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim. The bracha of Kiddush, and then you make the bracha of Hagafen. Why? Why does Beis Shammai say that? Mipnei shahayom gorem liyayin shiyaba. So we'll say Beis Shammai's logic is very interesting. Beis Shammai says, why are you making Hagafen? Why are you making Hagafen? I'm making Hagafen because of Kiddush. Right? I'm not just making Hagafen. I'm making Hagafen because of Kiddush. As such, it is the Yom that is goreng that causes the Hagafen. Because it's the Yom that's goreng, therefore the Yom comes before the Hagafen. Furthermore, Ukvar Kiddush Hayom V'Adayi Yayin Loba. And furthermore, again, there's a second reason Beis Shammai says, which is that the Yom comes before Hagafen. Why? Because the Kiddush of the day begins as of when? As of sunset. Or as of nightfall, we'll call it as of nightfall. So the Yom comes first before there's ever Hagafen. So I will say, so Beis Shammai's logic is twofold. Number one is that it is the Yom that is goreng the Yayin. It's the day, it's the Kedusha of the Yom that causes the need to make Hagafen. And number two, the Kedusha of the Yom precedes Hagafen, which just means calendrically, right? The Kedusha of the Yom begins even before I've made any kind of Kiddush. Therefore, again, Beis Shammai says Yom comes before Kiddush, before Hagafen. Beis Hillel say no, Beis Hillel says no, first we make the bracha of Hagafen, then we make the bracha on the Yom. Why? Because ultimately, again, it is the yayin which causes kiddush. Which was, according to Beis Hillel, if you don't have wine, or technically speaking, again, challah or matzah, right? You don't make kiddush. There is no concept of kiddush, at least by the Suda, if you don't have wine. Furthermore, davar acher berchas hayayin tedira. So we'll say, furthermore, Beis Hillel says, there's din of tediros. You have wine and you have kiddush, you have yain and gafen. So we'll say, whenever you have a question, whenever you have 2 mitzvahs to perform, and you don't know which one comes first, we always employ the concept of tadir b'sheno, tadir kodem, whichever occurs with greater frequency comes first. So therefore, both sides. So Beis Hillel himself advances 2 reasons as to why yain should come before kiddush. Reason number 1 is because it is the yayin that is goring the kiddush. In other words, without wine, there is no kiddush. And number 2, tadir v'sheno tadir kodem. And Abba said, the Gemara says, v'alacha k'divrei Beis Hillel. The halacha follows Beis Hillel. Also, we know this, that therefore halacha l'mayis, again, when we make kiddush, first comes the bracha and yayin barei pri hagafen, and then afterwards, also remember again, our kiddush is composed of 3 parts. Right? The first part is psukim. Second part is hagafen. Third part is kiddush, right? So remember again, in general, the Gemara doesn't focus so much on the first part of the psukim for the simple reason that the psukim are really just, they're nice and they're beautiful and they're more introductory, but lav dafka that they're part of the core of kiddush. The core of kiddush is the bracha of hagafen and the actual bracha of kiddush, right? So on Shabbos, mekadesh HaShabbos, on Yom Tov is mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. So machlok is Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. So the Gemara says halacha follows Beis Hillel. So for our purposes, we'll say a kiddush of introductory psukim, hagafen, and then the bracha of kiddush. So the Gemara says my davar acher. So by the way, interestingly enough, when the Gemara quotes the opinion of Beis Hillel, so first Beis Hillel says that there is no kiddush without yayin. Therefore, yayin has to come first, and then it says davar acher. Furthermore, something else. Tadir v'sheno tadir kodem. Why do you say davar acher? So the Gemara says v'chitima, because maybe you'll say hasan tarti v'hacha chada. So maybe you'll say, well, of course, Beis Shammai should win. Why should Beis Shammai win this argument? Because Beis Shammai advances 2 arguments, and Beis Hillel only advances 1. To which the Gemara says, no. Even by Beis Hillel, hachanami tarti ninhu tadir v'sheno tadir kodem. So I'll say, so again, the Gemara just says davar acher. Interestingly enough, Beis Hillel's core argument is really what? That without yayin there is no kiddush. That's their core argument. But the Gemara brings in tadir v'sheno tadir. Why? Because without that second argument, you would have assumed that Beis Shammai wins because Beis Shammai advances 2 arguments to support his position. Beis Hillel advances 1 argument to support his position. So bepashtos, Beis Shammai triumphs. To which the Gemara says, davar acher, by the way, Beis Hillel also has a second argument. V'alach k'dir Beis Hillel, so the halacha follows Beis Hillel. Pshita, isn't that obvious? After all, the hanafik baskol. Rabbi says, so here, this is really incredible. The Gemara quotes the Gemara. Rashbam quotes the Gemara Maseches Eruvin that said that Beis Shammai Beis Hillel argued for a number of years until a baskol, the heavenly voice, came out and said, "Halacha k'divrei Beis Hillel." So the Rebbe Shalom himself said, "Halacha follows Beis Hillel." So why does the Gemara have to say it? To which the Gemara is supposed to say, "This is incredible." Ibay Sema. Kodem baskol. It could be that the statement of this Gemara that the halacha follows Beis Hillel was written before the baskol. By saying la'achar baskol, or the other possibilities is after the baskol. For Rabbi Yoshua, he da'amar in mashkichem bebaskol. I will say that reflect the view of Rabbi Yoshua, who holds we don't listen to a baskol when it comes to halacha. Lo b'shamayim. Both say this is the famous episode of Tanur Shalachnoi. The Rashbam quotes the story. Tanur Shalachnoi, where again, I also remember again, you had the incredible machlokes in Rabbi Lazar and the Chachamim about the Tanur Shalachnoi, about the ritual impurity, the tumah of a particular type of oven. There was a whole machlokes. A baskol came out decided the halacha. Rabbi Yeshua said, Lo b'shamayim hi. Torah is not in the heavens. We do not decide halachas based on heavenly voices, even if they belong to the Ribono Shel Olam. So we'll say, so bottom line, and this is very important because the halacha l'maisa sugya, we paskin like Beis Midrash, which means that hagafen comes before kiddush, and that is how we paskin again throughout the year. Yom Tiv, Shabbos, first is the bracha of Hagafen, then is the bracha of Kiddush. Why? Because there is no Kiddush without Yayin, and furthermore, Tadir Visheno Tadir Kodim. Incredible. We'll say, let's go weiter. So now we come to the fascinating sugya. So we'll say, here we go. Now you're going to see this Mishnah. There is so much to Rabbi say, so many exciting sugyas here. So here we go, Mishnah. Hevi lefanov, they brought before him. Now again, you'll see the Mishnah itself is phrased in a strange way. So we're going to use the Rashbam to help fill in some of the blanks. What did they bring before him? So the Rashbam says, Hayurakos. So remember, we're going to both say, we're going through the Seder now. So we have Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas. So Bepashtos, what we're referring to over here, is karpas. That's what it sounds like. So they brought before him vegetables. Metabel bechazeres. You take the piece of lettuce and you dip the lettuce. Now look at the Rashbam again for just a moment. The Rashbam says over here, metabel bechazeres. The Rashbam writes, Zeh loshna talmud k'disan yileel. Hashem shetab b'neim be'ayil fisha kol ma'achom der. V'hai tibul lav becharoses. Both say very exciting. So Rashbam, what are you dipping in? Right? So the Mishnah tells me that I dip, but what am I dipping in? So the Rashbam says, I can tell you what you're not dipping in. What are you not dipping in? Charoses. Not dipping in charoses. Diktani lekamei heviu lefana matzah vechazeres vecharoses. Mechlal da'adayin lo heviu. V'ha chazeres lav davka ele imken yer. So let's listen to this. So the idea over here, says Rashbam, is we're going to see later on. So we'll say this is also fascinating. We're going to see that from the perspective of the Mishnayos, the Seder plate, you didn't have a full Seder plate on the table at the beginning of the Seder. Instead, different things were brought out over the course of the Seder. So the Rashbam points out that later on the Mishnah is going to say they bring out the charoses, which indicates that at this point in time, which is the beginning of the Seder, the charoses is not on the table. So we're dipping. What are we dipping? We're dipping lettuce. What are we not dipping? What are we dipping lettuce in? Not exactly sure yet, but one thing is clear, which is it's not in charoses. So we'll say, just take a look at Tosos in just a moment. Tosos says, Heviu lefanov, Perush Hashem Yurakos. So Rashbam says, again, they're bringing out vegetables. Ve'in yira midlo katani behedja Heviu lefanov chazeres, katani b'samoch Heviu lefanov matzon v'nira, Heviu lefanov shulchan, share'im avina shulchan ad achar kiddush. So we'll say, look how incredible this is. Fundamental halachos, Tosos and the Rashbam. All the Mishnah says is, they brought out, so I made Kiddush, now the Mishnah says, they bring out before him. So the Rashbam says, brought out before me means the vegetables. Vegetables for what? So according to the Rashbam, the Mishnah is describing karpas now. Tosa says, no. What are they bringing out? They're bringing out the shulchan. Well, so why are they bringing out the shulchan now? This goes back to what we learned earlier. Because at the time you make Kiddush, what are you not supposed to have in front of you? Food. So therefore, after you made Kiddush, now they bring out the shulchan. So we'll say fundamental machlokes, Rashbam and Tosos. Now, I gave you Tosos, I teased you a little bit, now you're going to put Tosos on the side. We're going to go with Rashbam's approach, that in fact, Heviu lefanov means vegetables. So they brought out vegetables. Metal bechazeres, so I dip the vegetables until I get to the parperes hapas. So we'll say, so again, the wording here is a bit cryptic, but the Rashbam understands that parperes hapas refers to maror. If you look at the Rashbam, Kodim Shiagila Osa Chazeres, Shu Ochel Achar Matzo, Shu Mevarich Alachilas Mar. So people say in the Rashbam's version, I'm eating lettuce twice over the course of the Seder. I'm eating lettuce once after Kiddush, that's karpas, and then I'm going to eat lettuce again later on. For what? For maror. So interestingly enough, now both say the real maror you can't fulfill until later on. Kidichsiv al matzos umerorim betchila mar matzav achar mar. We're going to see something amazing. Real maror, the mitzvah of maror, cannot be performed until later on in the Seder. Now the Rashbam says that ultimately, again, first you have to eat matzah, and then you eat maror. First you have to eat matzah, then, because the pasuk says, Amatzus umerorim yochluhu. You'll eat it to it being the Korban Pesach on matzah and maror. So here, according to the Rashbam, I'm eating lettuce now for karpas, and then I'm eating lettuce again later for maror. Why can't you just do maror now? Because Rashbam says real maror cannot be consumed until after matzah. Okay, so let's go back to the Mishnah. Hevi'u lefanav of matzah v'chazares v'charos. So here you have it. Then they bring out matzah, chazares, also chazares means lettuce, bepashtos for maror, and charoses, ushnei tavshilin, and 2 cooked foods. Afalpi, we'll discuss what that's for. Afalpi, she'in charoses mitzvah. But say this is incredible. We bring out charoses, even though what? Charoses is not a mitzvah. Charoses is not a mitzvah. Okay? So Elizabeth Zalik Omer mitzvah. Elizabeth says no, charoses is a mitzvah. So also we're going to discuss if charoses is not a mitzvah, then what is it doing there? Then what is it doing there at all? So machlokis if charoses is a mitzvah or not. Again, we'll see all of this. Ubemikdash hayumevi in the fun of gufal shal Pesach. I will say incredible. And in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, they would also bring out the entire lamb of the Korban Pesach. So again, this is right. We said before. Also remember, they don't bring out the Korban Pesach until after Kiddush is made as well. Now the truth is, they wouldn't bring out the Korban Pesach until later on anyway, because remember again, the Korban Pesach was neach al hasilva, right? The Korban Pesach was not per se the main meal, right? You had other karbanos or other sacrificial meat or other meat that served as the main meal. Again, we'll discuss all of this in greater depth. Rav will say, here you see the progression. Now what we're going to focus on is after Kiddush, like I said, we're going to leave aside Tostus. We're going to go with the Rashbam that they're bringing out chazaris, they're bringing out lettuce for the purpose of karpas. Amud Beis, Rish Lakish. So we'll say incredible sugya. So Rish Lakish says, Zos Omeres. From our Mishnah we learn the following, Mitzos Tzrichos Kavana. Wow. From our Mishnah we learn that in order to fulfill a mitzvah, you must have explicit kavana. Now what does this mean? Look at the Rashbam for just a moment. Mishum hachi boy trei tibule shemalon is kavim berishon l'shem marer holu berach alav brei priyadam kishayirak is dama shari ein adayin achilas mitzvahs marer levarich alav al achilas marer ava achar matzah. So we'll say, so once again the Rashbam says something very interesting. You see from here that mitzvahs require kavana, meaning so I'm eating lettuce for karpas, even though again it's the same lettuce I'm going to eat for marer, but yet I don't fulfill the mitzvah of marer. Why don't I fulfill the mitzvah of maror? So Rish Lakish says that's because mitzvahs require kavanah. And since, as we just said before, that real maror could only be eaten when after matzah, according to the Rashbam, at least for now. So therefore, when I eat this first piece of lettuce, I don't have kavanah for actual achilas maror. I have kavanah for karpas, not kavanah for maror. And because I don't have kavanah for maror, therefore what? I'm not yotzei mitzvah maror. Because the Gemara says, Kevin de lo ba'idon chiyuva de marahu, da achale borei priyadamuhu da achale. The dilma lo achavin the maror. Because since when I eat the karpas, right, when I eat the lettuce the first time, I'm only saying borei priyadama. I'm not saying alachilas maror. And I also have in mind that real maror has to be consumed after the matzah. Therefore, I'm not yotzei maror. Hilchach boy lemechadar lat bula l'shem maror. Therefore, I have to eat another kazayis of lettuce later on for maror. This sakadaitcha mitzvah lo baya kavana. Because also listen to Rish Lakish says, because if mitzvos did not require kavana, right? If you don't require kavana by mitzvos, then what? So let's play before we go and read the Gemara. If mitzvos don't require kavana, then what? Then what's the next line of the Gemara? Then what? Then Allah Chalamaisa, when I eat the first kizayis, we'll say, this is not a spectator sport learning. Come on. We'll say, so again, if mitzvos don't require kavana, you have the art scroll in front of you. My gosh. I just want to say, so again, if mitzvos don't require kavana, then what? Then when you go ahead and you eat the first kizayis, then what have you been yotzei? Maror. Right? They will say, if mitzvos do not require kavana, that means I don't need any explicit intent. We will say, just understand, when we say mitzvos don't require kavana, pretty much what that means is, as long as the behavioral act is good, you're yotzei the mitzvah. Right? As long as the technical, mechanistic details are there, Yotze Mitzvah independent of your das. So that means when you eat a kizayis of lettuce, whatever kavanah you had or you didn't have, you just fulfilled mitzvah of maror. So Reish Lakish is pointing out something very interesting. That kind of what you see, the byproduct of this entire sugya, is that clearly mitzvahs require kavanah, right? And that's why when you eat that first kizayis of lettuce, right, you're not yotze maror, because you don't have the kavanah. Because in your mind, what are you thinking? First of all, real maror comes after matzah. Right now, which again, we're going to discuss that concept by itself. But real maror, at least for now, real maror comes after matzah. I'm eating this now right after kiddush. So and all I'm making is a brei pri adama, and not what? Al achila smar, which is a birchas mitzvah on the mitzvah of maror. Therefore, all I'm doing over here is karpas, not maror. Because Reish Lakish says, if the isa adaitcha mitzvah lo baya kavana, lama lach treiti bule, v'hat tabile chada zimna. Because Reish Lakish will say, look, if mitzvahs don't require kavana, then halacha l'maisa effectively, I'm really yotze maror with that first kizayis. Right at the end of the day, then halacha l'maisa, when I eat that first kizayis of lettuce, I'm really yotze maror right then and there because they don't require explicit intent. To which the Gemara says, "The olam." So this is the position of Reish Lakish. So Reish Lakish is just as an aside. Reish Lakish says you see a very important halachic precept that's being developed here that mitzvos tzrichos kavana. Because if mitzvos didn't require kavana, then that first kizayis of lettuce ultimately again should be motzi mi in maror as well. To which the Gemara says, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe mitzvos really don't require kavanah. But 1 second. And now you're saying, but if mitzvos don't require kavanah, then why am I dipping the lettuce twice? Because remember again, the Gemara's going a little bit out of order here, but remember, we're dipping the first vegetable. Now, I just want to point out, the Rashbam, if you notice, by the way, two things over here. The Rashbam said, right, the Mishnah says, Heviu lefanam metal bechazeres, ad shemageh leparperes hapas. So remember, the Mishnah doesn't say what you're dipping. Right? The Mishnah doesn't say what you're dipping. The Rashbam translates, Heviu lefanam means yurakos, vegetables. Now, the fact that the Gemara is saying that you could have technically, of speaking, been yotze, the mitzvah of maror, with your karpas, tells us that what are you using? Lettuce, right? Or maror, right? The same. So just want to point out, there's a little bit of ambiguity as to what it is exactly that you're using for this dipping. But from this discussion over here, it's clear that contextually, you're using lettuce. You're using the same type of, the same food that you'll use for maror, you're now using for karpas. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. If you tell me, maybe mitzvos don't require kavanah. But if mitzvos don't require kavanah, then I should be yotze maror with the first dipping as well. So why do I need two dippings? Lamali kihechi dilihavi hakera letinokos. Because I will say, so what happens over here? So what happens over here is I do two dippings. Why? Because ultimately, again, we do a lot of things over the course of the Seder, kadeshi yishalu atinokos, to get the children to ask questions. In other words, maybe technically speaking, mitzvos don't require kavanah. The mitzvos don't require kavanah. And therefore, again, well, if that's the case, and then again, why am I doing this extra dipping? I could be yotze maror with this first time. The extra dipping is here just to do something strange. Why am I doing something strange? Just to get the kids to ask questions. I will say now, what I want to point out is something very interesting. If you hold mitzvos in tzrichos kavanah, the mitzvos don't require kavanah, halacha l'maaseh, everyone will agree that if you have explicit intent not to fulfill a mitzvah, then certainly it works. So we'll say, so therefore, again, according to this approach, it's possible that you could be yotze maror even with this first dipping. But I have kavanah that I'm not doing this for maror. Why am I dipping karpas? Why am I doing karpas, I will say? Right? Just to get the kids to ask questions. That's it. And remember again, interestingly enough, we'll see the halacha. Before we get to halacha ma'isa. So if that's the case, says the Gemara, why don't you illustrate this idea with karpas that uses other vegetables, not lettuce? Because you see, I both say this whole discussion comes up because you're using the same vegetable for karpas as you're going to use for lettuce. If indeed the only reason I do karpas is to stimulate questions, then why don't you use a different vegetable for karpas? To which the Gemara says, because we'll say, if the Gemara says, if we would have illustrated this concept with other vegetables, I would have said, when do you need a second maror? Only if you use a different vegetable for karpas. But if you use lettuce for karpas, then perhaps you don't have to do another lettuce from maror. It could be yotze, both with one. Kamash malan dafilu chazeres ba'inan trei tibule. Therefore, the Gemara says, no, the Chiddush of Osai is, even if you're using lettuce for both, halacha l'maisa, again, we're not yotze mara with karpas, because ultimately karpas is only done in order to stimulate the questioning of the children. Va'od Tanya, furthermore we learned, so the Gemara says, achlan demai, yotza, achlan b'lo miskavin, yotza. We'll say the Gemara is talking about, again, if you look at the Rashbam says, "Va'od Tanya behedya the mitzvos ein tzrichos kavana v'tufta Reish Lakish." Also, bring another brayso in that house says that mitzvos don't require kavana in an effort to refute the position of Reish Lakish. So the Mishnah says over here as follows: if you go ahead and you ate from mar, that's demai, or achlan b'lo miskavin, or you ate mar without kavana, yatsa. So we'll say this is pretty explicit that you can fulfill the mitzvah of mar even without kavana. So mitzvah tzrichos kavana achlan lachatza and yatsa. If you ate half a shear yotze, or as if you ate, or essentially if you took the shear of mar, divided it into two and ate it in two parts, but ultimately, as long as you don't wait longer than kedei achilas pras between eating the two sections. Okay, we're not going to get into that now. So the Gemara says Tanoihi. In reality, this entire thing is a machlokis tanoim. But mitzvos shrichos kavana or mitzvos ein shrichos kavana. Rabbi Yossi Omer afa pi shetiba bechazeres mitzvah lahavi chazeres v'charoses ushnei tavshilin. Rabbi Yossi says, even though you used lettuce for karpas, there is still a mitzvah to bring more lettuce for maror. The Gemara says, "Vakati mimai." Maybe Rabbi Yossi holds mitzvahs don't require kavana. And the only reason Rabbi Yossi holds that you have to dip the lettuce twice, or even though Rabbi Yossi holds mitzvahs ain't shrichos kavana, if that's the case, then aren't you yotze maror when you use lettuce for karpas? No, the only reason you'll need it twice. Why? In order to go ahead and create an opportunity for questioning for children. Im kain my mitzvah. If that's the case, then why does Rabbi Yossi say mitzvah? So we'll say. So I'm sorry for the quick nature. We'll say. Essentially, what we have is as follows: where Reish Lakish comes along and says that Allah Chalamais, you see from the Mishnah mitzvah shrichos kavana, because if mitzvahs didn't require kavana, you should be yotze maror with the first people, with the first tipping. If again, obviously, I will say. Reish Lakish's point only works if you're using maror, if you're using lettuce for karpas as well. To which the Gemara says not necessarily, because even if you hold mitzvos tzrichos kavana, mitzvos ain't tzrichos kavana, halacha l'maaseh says quite possible that the only reason why the first tibul of karpas was made was in order was to get the children to ask questions. And I will say, bottom line is halacha l'maaseh that is in fact the case. We understand that the reason why Chazal instituted karpas is only to create a certain aberration from the norm in order to go ahead and get the children to go ahead and ask questions. Which is why I will say, interesting enough, but what do we do contemporarily? We go out of our way to use something different for karpas than what we use for maror, right? Just want to point that out. That's like contemporary, different minhagim, what people use for karpas, but to whatever degree possible, we try not to use the same item for both karpas and maror. But Rabbi say we do something very interesting that links karpas and maror. What links karpas and maror? The hadama, right? Rabbi say remember again the bracha we make on karpas. We have in mind that it should be on the maror as well. Because remember again, that's a birchos hanen. Remember, we'll say even though I make Kiddush, I haven't yet made hamotzi, because remember, motzi matzah doesn't come till later, so I'm going to have to make a brei pri hadama on the item I'm using for karpas, and we have explicit intent that the hadama on karpas should go on maror. So we'll say, so we do see that technically speaking, the two could be linked. There is a linkage. However, what we'll call the Birchas HaMitzvah, right? The Birchas HaMitzvah, ultimately, again, of Al Achilas Marer, doesn't come until later on, because we adopt the position again. The discussion of mitzvos tzrichos kavana, mitzvos ein tzrichos kavana is a much bigger discussion that the Gemara does not solve here. But for our purposes, halacha l'maisa, and I will say, so in a normal situation, we have to stop. In a normal situation, so you would go ahead and you ideally use two different types of vegetables. One type of vegetable for maror, or for karpas, one type of vegetable for maror. They're linked because the hadama ultimately works for both of them. What happens if halacha l'maisa, you don't have a different type of vegetable, and all you have is lettuce? So what do? You're supposed to say, you use lettuce twice. You use lettuce for karpas, right, with a regular ha'adama, and then again you use lettuce later on, ultimately for maror. And halacha l'maisa, we do not assume that you go ahead and fulfill the mitzvah of maror with the first tibul. Why? Because the entire point of karpas is not to discharge a mitzvah. The entire point of karpas is to get the children to ask questions. Rabbi say shkayach. We'll pick up in Hashem with more in Yonei Seder tomorrow. How could I help you, Frank?